Welcome back once again. This is Rod Powell, and you are back with You Should Get a License podcast edition, your number one source for information, education, and inspiration on what I feel is the most underrated career opportunity in business today, and that is a career in the insurance industry. And today we are talking to a sales leader in this business, actually someone who, when I was new, I looked at from afar, and we were talking earlier before, the podcast actually started, about how you never know, who's watching you, because
you
never know who's watching you, because, whatever you do it could either be inspiring to someone else. It could be demoralizing to someone else. And this is someone who has certainly been, inspiring and motivating from the early stages of my career, that, I looked at and I was like, yo, man, I got to keep pushing. I got to keep pushing to get like this guy.
Well, I appreciate that, J-Rod. Thank you very much, man.
He's affectionately known as the Big Cat. He is the president of Right Quote Insurance. He has helped over 35,000 families and individuals, protect themselves and become more educated about their financial wellness, about their insurance needs, and providing those solutions. He has a mission to just keep it simple and make sure that he's taking care of everyone. He has a great heart. He's a great family man as well. And I'm excited for him to share his story and talk about his successes and his journeys. Mr. David Baxter. David,
well, happy Monday, J-Rod. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much,
man. Hey, look, this platform, like I said, once again, thank you for coming on. I know that this is going to be a very, very valuable conversation for all those that hear it. And, Dave, we're a couple hours off. I think we've done some West Coast. We're covering every time zone.
We're almost covering every time zone in the United States.
Central. We don't have Central yet, and we've had East, but he's coming from the mountain area. With this platform, it really is about educating people who maybe have just entered the business and looking to find their way, or maybe have questions. Maybe they've met with a company, they've met a recruiter, and they want to get some of that real, peel back the layers of the onion, raw, 100%. Unfiltered. This is what the experience has been like. This is what you can get out of it. I know that in my own personal experiences, I like to talk about some of the good, some of the bad, and really, show, the overall big picture of how beneficial it can be, even going through, all of those processes.
For sure.
So I want to start off with this, because you run a full service agency now.
Yep.
And I want you really to speak to, what is your segment, of the business? What's your area of specialty? What do you focus on? What do you help people with on a day-to-day basis?
So I would say I'm the business guy. So I like business because I feel like there's more moving parts, right? I like working with entrepreneurs, small business owners, because you get the best of all worlds. Like, if you want to work with home and auto, they probably have a home and auto, right? Like, if you want to work with their health insurance, most likely they probably have either health insurance individually for themselves, say their wife and their family, or they probably have some group plan. And depending on the size and scale of their business, it could be, more challenging or less challenging to get it enrolled in a timely fashion. So I would say I like that part. I also like dealing in the weeds and like business, because I love business, right? Like, I'm a business owner. I've owned businesses. My family's owned businesses throughout my whole life. So I would say the biggest part of like owning a business is knowing how to understand when you're talking to people like-minded, so if you're talking to a business owner, to have that, I would say, like-mindedness, to understand where they're at, to put yourself in their shoes and say, hey, bro, I get it, because I've been there, so that I would say is why I like business and why I like business owners. It's more challenging and there's more things going on.
Yeah. I think that's so important to speak to for a couple of different reasons. One, when people think about entering insurance, many times they're just thinking, going into an individual's home, sitting at the kitchen table, and that's, the one way to do it. Or they think of maybe going into the local, agent's office, the State Farm or the Allstate,
Yep.
whatever it may be, and or calling from the car dealership when they buy a car.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Those types of pieces, but they don't see themselves, as that business owner, right? And
correct. Not a lot of people, not a lot of them do. You're right, J-Rod. No.
Yeah. So I think that's really important because, hey, look, this is a business where you are an entrepreneur. You have to be. You have to be. Even if you are aligned with an organization, you still have to be an entrepreneur, right?
You have to, otherwise you won't get very far. I think that's where a lot of people, if they think they got this big vision and they expect that there's going to be a lot of these, safety net checkpoints along the way, they're like, it's crazy. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You got to surround yourself with a bunch of mentors that have been there that can say, you did that. What? But they're there to help you through the mud. That's right. You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing in insurance, right? Is I don't have all the answers. I've been here a long time and I've seen a lot of crap, but I don't have all the answers. But what I do know is that I have people now surrounding me that can find the answers 100%. That can find the answers 100%.
And here's the second part of that. As an entrepreneur, as someone who is, building, a business, being able to communicate with other business owners, it's about understanding that they're experiencing some of the same challenges that you're experiencing.
100%. Right? Yes. And so that makes me feel good because you don't go into it like, whoa, I got all these problems, but you guys are perfect. No, like every big business, small business, I'm telling you, man, is just like marriages. They all got problems, right? They all got deficiencies. They all got, celebrations too. But if you can just level with them, like, hey, look, I'm just trying to help you from this perspective because I'm a business owner too. And hey, have you had these type of challenges? Because then if you can lock onto them and say, hey, look, I've had that same kind of challenge. They're like, whoa, so have I. Tell me about it. And then all of a sudden you build credibility, right? And before any sales can happen, right, in insurance, you got to establish credibility and you got to establish trust. If you cannot do either one of those two, the odds are you're going to go home to your wife or go home to your manager and say, hey, yeah, they were insurance poor. No, it's because you didn't create any trust. And you probably didn't create enough credibility in there because if you did, they would have saw the value of what you were selling and they would have bought it. 100%. 100%.
There you go, man. It's those almost,
right. And everybody said, well, they just didn't, they didn't see the value in it. There's 1,000 excuses. We could all write books, right, J-Rod? But at the end of the day, it's because you were not a trustworthy enough person to that person. That's it. And that's not saying that you're not trustworthy. I'm just saying you didn't build the bridge between you and him or her or whatever and got there together,
Absolutely. Now you've been in the industry 19 years now, almost 20 years, almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Still a young guy. You're right.
Yeah. It's wild that when you get in it young, that you look back and you're like, man, how, like I say, how dumb was I? But then how smart was I too? Because I see a lot of you too. You see a lot of people that have had careers, whether it's in the military or whatever, and then they want to start the insurance, say at like my age right now, 40, right. 50 years old, which there is still a lot of value in that, like humongous value. But the earlier you can start it, right? Like I've met some kids, right? And I call them kids because they're younger than me that have just as much time in the business as I am. And I'm like, that is wild. It's awesome though. It's great because people can see the big picture. If you're truly in this to help people and solve problems, you will never, ever, ever have to find another job in your life again, because this job will afford you more than you will ever deserve if you can just treat people good and solve problems. That's it.
I want to just pull out, I want to extract a little bit of what you just said. You said, you have people who have gone through, had careers, whether it be military, private sector.
Yes.
Once they finish that career, then they enter into the industry.
100%.
Side, you also have people who are fresh out of high school, jumping right into the business and experiencing.
You've seen it, J-Rod, right?
I have seen it. Seen it, and it's really fascinating because I don't know if there's another industry that somebody can actually come into, regardless of your level of experience. You're really starting on the same playing field.
100%. The barrier of entry in this industry is super low, but I will tell you it is super high to stay there though, right? Like
Correct.
the barrier of entry super low, right? And you can go make a couple dollars. We've seen it happen even at our former firms, right? Like you can see them go out there, make 10, 15,000 in one enrollment, couple houses, and you're like, this is the next coming of Jesus, right? Right here. You're like, this is the guy we're going to put we need to find 50 more guys like them, right? And then like 3 weeks later, they're out of the business. And why was that? It's because whatever was getting them going to start that thing, that motor stopped, right? And I think as managers, as leaders, it's our job to keep putting gas in that motor from a perspective of how we motivate, right? Not that it's our job to keep them going on that path or that vision, but it's really our job to keep them, if they have that vision, to keep pushing them towards that vision all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think a lot of times we just think as managers, as leaders in this industry, because it's an industry that we make commission sales, right? Where you can make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year, right? So like most people, they come into this thinking, I'm going to make a lot of money. And then they make it in the first 3 months. They made more money in 3 months than they made in 3 years. I've seen it happen, J-Rod, right?
Yeah.
And they all of a sudden think it's so easy, and they didn't realize that when they came in, they were hungry. They were they were hungry. They were probably accountable, and they had a mission, right? They had a vision and a mission. Like, my bank account is dry. I need to get it full of money. Right. And once it gets there, then they're like, I don't know what's next. Right. Because now they put money in that bank account, they bought a new house, bought a new car. And if they don't have the next step, right. And that's the thing for me. That was the thing. Like, I made a lot of money. I still make a lot of money, but it's not about the money for me. It's really about helping people solve challenging things in their business and in their real life too. Like if they have challenges with their health insurance, they got challenges with their life insurance, because I'm dealing with a guy right now. He's 61 years old and he's looking for life insurance, but he's got COPD, right? So that's tough, man. And like 5 years ago, he didn't have any of that stuff, right? It's like it can change in an instant. And you go from, it's like credit history, right? It's like you go from being credit worthy to like not being able to borrow a dollar. It's the same thing in insurance, right? You go from being able to have the $10 million life insurance on yourself to you can't get life insurance unless your wife goes on to a second to die policy with you. And that sucks, So that's the type of stuff that I like to solve in the industry. Like, where is the policy for that guy? There is somebody out there that will insure that guy, right? But where is it? So that's what I do, is I try to find it, right? That's my focus.
Yeah. And you bring up another good point, like what's the why? What are you driven by? I used to say you can't teach desire. But I heard another podcast with Tom Bilyeu where they said you could teach desire. So I'm going to figure that one out. But I always felt that, hey, you can't teach desire, because you can teach the tools, techniques, and all those things, but you have to establish, what you are in it for. And like you said, people can come out, they have that early success, they have a little bit of change coming in, and once they got that, they just sit down for 6 months, and and it takes forever to get that momentum going again, because remember, like the first 6 months that you come out, you're either hitting that momentum because you're talking to all your friends and family and everybody in your community, everybody in your social network. And then what happens is once you make that money and you get up on top, you forgot what it took to get there. And all of a sudden you're at the bottom. Now, when you go back and drum up all that momentum again, you can't do it with your friends and family and all these people, because it's like doing a wedding twice, right? How many of those do you do, right? You don't. So it's like, once you get that momentum, keep charging it and supercharging it. And I'm not talking about being aggressive. I'm talking about being aggressive with you, right? Like passionately make you visible so that everybody knows that you're putting yourself out there. That way, if somebody sees your podcast, right, and like, you know what, I want to get my license, who are they going to probably call? You, right? Because they're like, what, you have the wherewithal and the knowledge and the experience of getting your license. And a lot of people that probably have had their license. So you could help probably anybody in America get their license, right? So that's the same way with us. Is we want people to come to us and say, look,
if you're looking for business insurance, if you're looking for health insurance, if you're looking for any kind of insurance, we're not just here to say, hey, we're going to find you the cheapest. No, we're going to say, why are you looking for it? And then we're going to find you the right policy for this time in your life. And that's really what we're all about, because we're passionate so that nobody else has to be. Because tell me how many people on both of your hands are passionate about insurance that you personally know, right? And you work with insurance people, right? And I would say same thing. I work with insurance people, and I would say as passionate as me or more, there's probably 5 or 6 in my life, period. So that just tells you that there's a lot of insurance people out there, and God bless them. They're just, they're not for you, right? They're for their own pocketbooks generally, right?
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I will say I've been fortunate, especially in recent times, to meet, quite a few, via, the interviews and conversations.
Yeah.
Really passionate, but there's a whole bunch that I've certainly met that aren't necessarily in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, right. I'm sure all the ones that are on your show, are probably very passionate, but think about how many people that I've recruited and you've recruited
I get
over
it.
the years that say, I'm passionate. I want to make money. I want it for my family. I want this. And it's kind of like Mike Tyson said, is that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And that is insurance in a nutshell, is that once you get that first hit, you got to be like, all right, that wasn't so bad. Let me get some more, right?
That's right. Something has to drive you. And really that goes to the other point that you made. I mean, even when you're speaking about, your client and what you're looking to do, you're not talking about, I got to get this done because this is how much I'm going to make on it. You're saying, hey, look,
it's about the money.
I want to find the solution for him. You're
correct.
And for, those that are listening, with someone like David, who has been very successful, even in my own career, I've had some successes as well. The money has been probably the last thing, that I would think that we probably have even thought about. It's more about, how much value can we add? Can we find
100%?
And the value that you add, your income is going to be commensurate with the amount of value that you add.
100%. It's going to be 100% incongruent with how you treat people. Okay. Like, and I will challenge anybody that listens to your podcast or out there in the insurance world that says, I put in 1,000%, incongruent with who I am, and they're, call it, they're the second coming of Jesus. And if they're not successful, I would say you weren't following the system then, because all you have to do is understand people, treat them nice, understand how to solve problems by asking questions, right? And then coming up with a plan, let them make the decision, and then support that decision. Because if you sold that decision, then you got to support it too, right? And if you can do all those things, at the end of the day, you're going to be a very successful insurance person. It doesn't come fast. It doesn't come easy, but it comes. 100%.
Absolutely.
You can't be in this business for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 45 years, whatever it is, and not be successful, because just by being in business for that long, you're going to be successful.
Can't help it, right?
People are just going to call you like, bro, you've been in business 45 years. I want to do business with somebody like that.
That's right, man. Look, I want to go all the way back. So I want to just change course just a little bit.
Yeah.
20 years in the business, a lot of success. I want to go all the way back before you were the big cat. I want to go back to when you were the little cat, 9 years old. What'd you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a doctor of all things. And I do not have any doctors in my family whatsoever. There's not one doctor in our family that I know of anyway. And so, like, for whatever reason, I wanted to be a doctor, probably because it's challenging, right? And because it's probably when I'm young that somebody told me that you could make a lot of money becoming a doctor. But what I soon realized when I got older is that insurance men and women and professionals can make way more than any doctor out there if you stay in it long enough, because of the thing called renewals. So I would say when I was 9, I wanted to be a doctor. When I was 18, I wanted to still be a doctor. By the time I was 20, because I got my license at the age of 21. I think the first time I got my license, I'm 42 now, right? But I think I got it. I passed it. I didn't go into insurance for about another 6 months after that, which is why I say I'm not fully 20 years in this yet. But I started about 6 months after that, went with a company that was called actually Conseco back in the day, which was our former firm. I started with them, was out for about 6 months. My dad actually had cancer. We were selling cancer insurance. My dad actually got cancer, said, I need your help. So, of course I went and helped. And I was his chauffeur and I call executive assistant. That was my first time being an executive assistant. But so my dad we drove around and I got to learn a little bit of his business, and I probably worked with him for about 2 years. And then I decided that, I love my dad, but we're just not like, he's a super intelligent guy, super successful guy. And like, I consider myself super successful and super smart. We just couldn't and I love him and we're awesome together, and we hunt and, fish and do a lot of stuff together. Just cannot run a business together. You know what I mean, brother? So I got to the realization that I got to do something else. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to school again and finish up this doctor thing. So I went and did 2 years, got all the prerequisites for, medical school, took the MCATs, scored very borderline, right? So I could go to the Caribbean, I could go to these different foreign schools, but I really wanted to go to the US school, right? And I decided to put it on hold, went to Home Depot, and then I was at Home Depot for about 4 years, and then PMA came calling, and then PMA, I was there for 12 more years. And then last year I started Right Quote. But I mean, it's been wild. It really has, because it's not like anything that I would have ever scripted, yet it's everything I would want scripted. You know what I mean? It's weird. I don't know how to explain it, because it's nothing that when I was this old, and it's not like it was anything forced or like this was my last shot. It was just like God kept corralling me, bro, you need to go into this, because this is where you're going to help people, and this is where I need you. And admittedly, it's not insurance is not hard to me, and it's not hard because I can talk to people like you can talk to people, J-Rod, and people will understand that we're genuine and we mean what we say. So I think a lot of times if I'm sitting down with a family, or I'm sitting down with a business owner, I'm sitting down with another insurance professional, they can feel that I'm empathetic, and they can feel that I care about the situation, right? I might not get as emotional as them, but I understand, and I'm very caring and understanding of the situation, and I truly want to solve it for them. So that's what I would say is, where I'm at now. But yeah, at 9 years old, I was not going to be an insurance guy. 100%.
No, I love that, man. I love that. It's about this, coming into this industry is it's not, when you start, it's not necessarily where you expect to go.
No.
Wow, it's where you expect it to be, right?
Yeah, that's right. Right. It's but I like where I'm at, right?
You're like, yeah, it's it makes sense.
It makes sense. And it truly is the harder you work in insurance to create what you want, the faster you'll get there. It really is but a lot of people well, I don't even know what I want. Well, what kind of insurance do you want to sell? Well, what kind is there? Everything, right? I mean, there's literally everything. We just had a guy that called us the other day, said, I'm shipping containers from China, and I'm shipping 250,000 a time to get over here. It's some AV equipment or whatever. He's like, do you sell that kind of policy? So I called our network of people. I'm like, yes, we actually have that. It's called a marine policy. And it was for what he was looking for, it wasn't as expensive as I thought, because I was thinking $2 million, $2.5 million. How much could that be? But it was actually a couple $1,000. That was it. Yeah, it wasn't bad. So there is all kinds of, and then even sidebars of veins of insurance that you thought you knew. I know life insurance. Yeah, but do you know how to do second to die? Or do you know how to do corporate life insurance? Do you know how to do key man life insurance? There's all these sidebars where you're whoa, you could just have a career just in that.
Just in that,
just
right?
In that. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
So, but that's why I like doing what I do, because there's so many days where you come into it thinking, okay, I got a plan. I'm going to make all these calls. And you literally get in there and one email switches your whole day, where you're it just boom. You're how did that happen? And this is my famous, or not my famous, but I tell this to my guys and gals that work with us here at Right Quote. I say, we're always one call away from being millionaires. We really are, because there's that one person that can call that can change everything, right? 100%. So I always tell them, anytime the phone rings, I'm like, there's your call. Are you sure you're not going to want to answer that? So it's all about just putting yourself in the right perspective so that when the information comes to you, that you're ready to take it full force on. I think a lot of people have great opportunities in insurance. Now we're talking that have great opportunities that fall flat in their lap, and they don't really realize what's in their lap. And they're like, yeah, but I'm making money over here. You're like, yeah, but bro, if you realize what you have in your lap, you would never have to do that ever again. Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest thing in insurance, is that it is patient. You got to have patience, and you got to have fortitude, and you got to have persistence. And the people that say that, it's a, get rich quick, it's not, man. It's
definitely not that.
Get rich. It might never happen, but you might get rich. And that's all perspective, right? But you might get rich if you do the right things, you stay in it for the right amount of time, and you have your respect at the end, right? Like, you didn't have to do a lot of bad things to get to where you're at, right? Because we know a lot of those guys, not a lot, but I know people that are in insurance, right, that have gotten there the wrong way, and they are glorified as like good insurance people. And I would say, yeah, but peel back the layers of the onion, you find that it stinks. You know what I mean? So
that's right. And
I'm saying it's not that they're bad, like they're doing fraud, but they're bad because they're only thinking with their pocketbook and never thinking with their customer's pocketbook.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even in those situations, usually it's short lived or it's not sustained.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And they usually find their way out. But I'm like, but those are the ones I want to change, because they have, they're able to connect, right? They're able to connect with people and be able to sell people. But if they just had a 1 degree where you're like, okay, let's just focus on the positives, and 1 degree positive, I think that person could be a positive for everybody. But I think a lot of times is they find, I can just cheat a little bit there and nobody will notice. Before you know it, like, they get too far down the road, it's just bad. But there's not a lot of those guys, but they make a bad name for all the ones that out there working hard, for the customers. You know what I mean?
A note for anyone, joining the business, if you're new, if you're just getting started. Matter of fact, there's a new agent who I'm going to talk to on Friday. I'm going to talk to her about something unrelated. And I want to mention this conversation to her, just to say, hey, look, compliance matters.
It 100% does.
You're like doing your career.
100%
started. Make sure that you are on point with with being compliant, being ethical in your business transactions, because things can come back to haunt you.
They always will come back to haunt you. If you wrote it bad, it will always come back to haunt you. 100%. I'm a firm believer of that.
That's it. So coming back, so I want to go back and spend a little bit more time, just in your upbringing.
Yeah.
Come from an entrepreneurial family. I know your dad ran a business. He went to Harvard. He invented the 4-wheeler.
So my dad worked for a company called Polaris, right? So everybody knows Polaris, big maker of snowmobiles, ATVs, side by sides, motorcycles, right? Well, I think they sold their motorcycle business, but when I was growing up, my dad was an engineer by trade. So and I didn't know this until, I got to be probably, teens, right? And I understood some of these things. Well, he was on the team. Well, he was actually the vice president of engineering. So he was one of the project leads on designing the first 4-wheeler, because back in the day, everybody had 3-wheelers, right? So there's motorcycles, and then they're like, well, let's make 3-wheelers. So Honda came out with like the Big Red. I think if anybody on the podcast understands Big Red, that was like the tricycle of terror. It really was, man, because going over ditches when you try to land, right? Think when the thing would jar. I mean, it was crazy, right? So we crashed so many of those, but not when I was small. I'm talking, when I was older, but when I was young, I remember the first thing I ever got from my dad was a snowmobile. I probably got one at like 3 years old, and I still have pictures of me driving out in the backyard, because my birthday is in October. So sometimes in Minnesota, it doesn't snow in October, even though it's late October. So I remember there was a light dusting on that because I remember seeing the picture. It was like a Polaroid and there was a light dusting. And I remember telling my dad, I'm going out there. And I remember he had to, take me out there and show me what track I could go on. And I was out there for probably, I bet you 20 minutes, just going on like grass and dirt and whatever. It was the greatest thing ever, man. But so I grew up, around all those kind of like, sports activities. So, whether it was motorcycles, snowmobiles, four-wheelers, jet skis, if it was rideable, I was trying to race it. I was trying to race my friends, race it, because we grew up in a town where half the town, maybe 3/4 of the town worked at Polaris, right? So it was in this town of like 2,000 people. And there was another facility like an hour away that built Articat, right? So Articat was the other big Polaris competitor back in the day. Was actually started by the same guy that started Polaris, started Articat. One of the same guys, his name was Edgar Ateen, and he started Articat too because he got pissed at Polaris leadership and went down the road and said, screw you guys, I'm going to start this. So it was pretty cool. And then I remember probably around 10, 11, 12 years old, I started racing, like not professionally, but we'd go to like Canterbury Downs in Minneapolis, or we'd go to like up to Duluth. They had like up at Lutzen, they would have, and these were all like ski resorts. So they would turn the ski resort into like a snowmobile festival type of a thing. And I was probably racing from, like I said, early teens, maybe even earlier than that, up until I was like 16, 17 years old. And then I decided, I got to go to college. This is cool. It's fun, but I'm not going to make a life out of this, which there's a lot of people that do. Maybe I could have, maybe I could have, but I was like, at that time there was X Games and X Sports and all that stuff, but it wasn't as big as it is now. Like where that Ricky Carmichael makes, millions of dollars. The top guy was like making, like maybe $100,000 type of thing, just because it wasn't as big back then.
It was big in Minnesota.
Yeah, it was big in Minnesota. It just wasn't big worldwide or nationwide yet, right? So, but then that was kind of my upbringing. Was we were always outdoors. So it was either on the lake fishing, on the lake boating, on snowmobiling, hunting, fishing, camping. We would it was like every place we'd go, it was always to do something outdoors. My dad's a huge outdoorsman, and I would say I'm not as big. I'm a huge outdoorsman, but he's the king. I mean, he loves outdoors, and he seems to be good at everything. Like if people want to go fishing, they always go fishing with Chuck. He knows where the hot spots are because other people tell him where the hot spots are. But he always knows. Like if I'm out there and I'm like, man, we can't catch anything. He's like, go, where's your coordinates? Go to point number 3. So then you drive into point number 3. Literally put your line down, and boom, you're getting fish. So it's like it's wild, So he's always been. Like it's just like everything he touches turns to gold from that perspective. Because he's a good person, though. I think that's why like life always treats people that are good better. I just feel like that. Like if those people that have a good heart, that are compassionate, empathetic, and are for people, I really feel like life is for those type of people. I really do. No matter how hard it is for you and no matter how bad it gets for you, he always said, if you can look for the good and find the good, and every day, every night, I remember growing up that he'd put me to bed. He would say, what were the 3 good things that happened to you today? So he'd always try to put you to bed with a positive mind. And my mom was always very positive too. She almost, like, she's not with us anymore. She passed away in 2011, but it sucked. But she passed away actually from she had Pick's disease, so it's like a rare form of Alzheimer's, and it basically turned her back into a child. So my dad tried to take care of her for a couple of years, and then we had to put her into one of those assisted living facilities, and she got so bad that they said, well, she's not really for it, because she would do it a lot of screaming, like think of a kid, right? And then put him into a 60-some-year-old body, right? And that's basically what my mom was. Super nice lady, growing up. So she would never, like, even as she got older, how like some of those older folks, as they get older, they kind of get more cranky and curmudgeon, right? Like she actually was almost more like brazen and just like, okay, I was just like, you could hear mom coming, right? So, but yeah, so I would say we always had really good life growing up. Our family was super tight. We'd always get together with all of the, like, her side had 9 brothers and sisters. My dad's side had like 7, I think, 7 and 9. And then even now, like, to get those family pictures, I mean, they're gigantic, because all the cousins and now, secondary cousins and third cousins and all kinds of stuff, so it was fun growing up in that family. It still is fun. We get together a lot. We try, last couple of years, it's not been fun because of COVID and whatever's going on, but outside of that, we always try to, have awesome times together.
Yeah. So the part of Minnesota that you grew up in, is that close to Wisconsin? Is it close to?
So no, we're by the chimney stack. So if you look at Minnesota, right, and then at the very top, you're like, what is that little chimney thing, right? That's called the northwest angle. So that's part when, I guess, whoever was going through the woods and figured out where the deal was, they actually missed the line, and that's how because that's actually part of Canada, the chimney stack, right? Because so they call it the northwest angle. So you actually, to get to there, sometimes you have to go through Canada to get back to the US. It's very weird.
Got you. Okay. So snowboard, that's going to make perfect sense because here we're like, well, when can we use the snowboard? We get maybe, December, it can be 85 degrees out here now sometimes.
Yeah.
Lately. But I remember so you were way further up, but I remember driving through Wisconsin when I lived in Chicago at the time, and I would assume that the weather in Minnesota is probably similar if it's colder outside.
It's similar. The only thing that makes it a little bit more cold in northern Minnesota is they got like this vortex, right? So there's always this cold line that, like, from probably maybe 20 miles south of there and north, it just, like, during polar vortexes, it just gets whipping cold, right? Like 40 degrees or minus 40 for, like, say, a couple days, 3-4 days. So I mean, it gets bad. So I think the nice thing about, like, Wisconsin, which is beautiful, number one, it's got some hills, but number two as well is I don't think it's as low, right? Like, I think probably Wisconsin's maybe at a couple thousand feet, where literally Roseau, Minnesota, I think is 1,000 feet above sea level.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it gets cold.
I'm just going to describe the conditions to you that I was driving in. You tell me if it's similar, one, and if it was the same response. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I'm driving, there's snow coming down and I'm slipping and sliding all around the road. And I get to my destination. I was visiting a music store, I remember, and I got to the store and I was talking to the owner of this store, and I'm like, man, this traffic is something. He's like, oh, that's nothing out there. Was it like that where you're from?
So I'll tell you, so in Fargo too, so that's where I went to college, and Amy and I were there for 20 years, right? Fargo is very notorious for wind and creating drifts, right? Well, it's nothing like the drifts in most people's mind. They're like, well, yeah, but it drifts just snow, right? Well, it's snow until 40-mile-an-hour winds goes over it for like a week, and it turns into literally a concrete wall, right? So like, and they're on these, country bumpkin roads. So, me, we've been, on every country road in North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota in 12 years, right? So, like, when you're going down these roads, you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't look so bad. You got to judge them like, is that a freshly packed drift, or has that been there a while? Because when you go through them, you can get hung up, right? And then that was the thing, like, if you got hung up and now the wind's blowing, you don't know which way. Like, okay, was the last farmhouse that way or was it that way? And the last thing you want to do is get out, because we've had some people that, die, not from our team, but like in the country that, they get stuck, they try to go for help, and they get turned around and they didn't put on enough clothing, right? And now there's nowhere, they basically die of hypothermia. That's a real thing. It happens more than we'd like to admit in the North,
So if you are, selling insurance in the Great North area, northern Minnesota, one, make sure that you have enough clothing in your car at all times.
100%. We'd always have that. Yeah.
Dress, and certainly pay attention to make sure it's not a hard, wall.
I mean, I took off so many ground effects, like the ground effects on cars and spoilers and all, like ground spoilers, like so many of them. And then the other thing too was like after a hard day of, out on the road like that, bounding through drifts, if you had a truck, right? Like I had F-150s and Toyota Tundras and all kinds of fun stuff out there. The other thing that would get you if the snow didn't was the snow packed into your wheels, bro. You know what I mean? So then all of a sudden you're driving down the road and you're like, bro, why does this sound like my wheels about to fall? Because you got 5 pounds of snow packed in there. So then in the middle of the winter, you got to go try to find a place that's got one of those manual car wash, and then you'd go in there and try to spray it out. Or we got even smarter later in life is we would carry like the really long screwdrivers so we could fit it in there and then twirl it around, try to get it out there. But man, it was wild.
Look, important stuff that he's saying, because these are the types of sacrifices and conditions that you have to work in if you want to be successful in this.
Yeah, if you want to make it out to that guy that said, I ain't coming into town, the only way you're going to sell me is if you come out here. Well, you're going to go out there, right?
There you go, man. How'd you get into insurance, man? How'd you actually get into the business?
So I wish there was like this big, epiphany story, like, oh my God, I went through 70 jobs and, then all of a sudden I came across some. I cannot tell you the person that introduced me to insurance. And I would say that if I were to be honest, that every person along the way has told me to get the hell out of insurance. From my dad to my wife, but in the beginning, because I remember I just got married right when I went to PMA the second time, which was in 2009. Yes. My wife and I literally just were going to get married because we got married in 2006, right? So we were married like 3 years, okay? And I remember this, they called me, PMA did. I remember she's no longer with us, but she was actually one of the really good recruiters back in the day. She was from Texas. I can't remember what her name was. Super nice gal though. So she called me and she said, hey, blah, 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 blah. We're going to be in town. And they do, how they do the big, we're going to have a group interview type of thing. And I said, okay, but I just, to be fair, warn to you, I used to work with you guys, if you know that, back in 2002, right? So I was short stint for like 3-6 months there. And then they came calling again. So I didn't know if there was going to be like some trouble because, when I quit, it was more like my dad had cancer and I said, look, I can't come back. And they're like, are you sure? And I said, yeah. So there was kind of a falling out there because they didn't understand. And I was like, that's fine. I got to go do what I got to do. Right. So the second time around, I met with the recruiter. It was one of those big conference rooms. There's probably like 30 chairs in there. And he's like, yeah, everybody's going to come in, because I got there maybe 15 minutes early. He's like, yeah, everybody will start filing in there. It turned out to be me and him 45 minutes just chatting about insurance. And I still remember to this day him telling me, yeah, you'll be able to make $500,000 within like a year. And I was thinking, okay, bro, just relax. Okay, just relax. Okay. But I go home to my wife and I tell her, hey, I got this, because I was doing interviews and I'm like, hey, I got this interview. I think this is the one. And she said, why? I said, because this guy said I can make $500,000 in a year. And I said, I really believed him. For some reason, I really believed him in my heart of hearts. I was like, okay, yeah, all right. So I go home, tell my wife, we're just freshly married, just freshly moved into a house, don't have kids yet, thank God, yet. But so we just move into the house and I tell her, hey, I'm going to go on the road 4 days a week and I got to pay for that going on the road. And there's no salary, no guarantee. But the guy said I'd make $500,000. And knowing how crazy, but here's the thing, you got to understand, I'm always one of these guys that when I feel like somebody's telling me the truth, I actually believe it as though it's truth. Whether they're telling me a shit pot or whatever, right? And I go meet with these guys. One was Joe Kuiper, who was in the business with us. He was a state manager. That was my first manager. So like to have a cool guy like Joe, because we always used to call him cool guy Joe, because one time he was in a house, which is a funny story. He was in a house and he was selling, and it got down to the end, and this one of their sons who had some disabilities kept tapping him on the shoulder. Hey, Joe, hey, Joe, hey, Joe, you good guy, Joe? You good guy, Joe? Joe's like, yep. Just trying to, just keep him distracted long enough so he can get the papers signed. Cause this is like Joe's like first month in the business, dude. This guy is awesome at insurance, been in insurance for now 12, 13 years. This was his first month in the business. The guy, like Joe, and the guy, Joe turns to him, he grabs him by the face and puts the biggest, sloppiest kiss all over his face. And the people are like, OMG, right? And Joe's like, he doesn't know what to do. And they're like, go sit down. I can't remember his name is Mark or whatever. Go sit down, Mark. You're not supposed to be doing that. And they finish up the paperwork. But I remember it wasn't like maybe a month later, and Joe's at one of the first FLTs with him and I. It must have been like maybe 6 months later. But I remember them telling that story because Tim and Rick told that story and everybody was just dying, right? And it stayed with him for 12 years, right? And those are the crazy things that happen when you're selling insurance, dude. It really does. Yeah. But it's awesome. It's awesome too, because those are the connections, dude, that last a lifetime. And if you then leverage that and use that to your advantage, that every house can't get any worse than that house, you'll be successful out there. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? Some stranger kissing you in a house, right? It doesn't get much stranger than that, right?
No, it doesn't. And if you can survive in this business, you can survive anywhere.
I'm telling you, like, that's why most employers, when they hear, hey, I've been successful at insurance, or they know that you've been on the road, so like you're always in demand, because you know how to treat people. You probably have good customer service, and you're accountable, because that's what you have to do when you're in insurance.
Your work ethic is going to be off the chain if you've been successful.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. 100%. And they know it too.
Yeah.
And then, so, I want to ask, as we begin to kind of come to where you are now, obviously, your wife is glad that you stayed in insurance,
Hunter, yeah. I would say every day after the first, right? J-Rod gets better, right? And it dips like the stock market, but like, you just have to get it going, and then just always trust yourself to just keep moving, right? Like, no matter how hard it gets, always promise yourself that you're going to hold to those same promises that you set when you first went out, right? Because you're going to get doors slammed in your face. You're going to get people telling you no. You're going to get people that jerk you around. You're going to get, other insurance companies that tell you can do something and then you can't, right? Like, there are things that are just going to come up. You can prepare for everything, but you cannot prepare for everything in insurance, right? Like, you can prepare, but you can't. You just put yourself in a good mood every day, whether it's you got a mantra, whether it's that you just go through your morning phase, whatever that is, whether you like to get up and read quotes, whether you like to get up and just read, but you need something to get your mind moving how people's minds move, right? Like, if you all of a sudden just open up your phone in the morning and you just put it like in garbage, right? Like, we know where garbage is at, but if you just put it in garbage, most likely you're going to like transmit garbage out there, right? And you're going to receive garbage, right? So that's where put yourself in a good mood, in a good state of mind to listen and to comprehend, because like I said, 70% of my day consists of listening. It really does. Yeah. The other 30% consists of me comprehending what that 70% was and finding a solution for it somehow, period.
There you go, man. So that actually leads into really my next question. How do you feel that having a license has helped, or working in this industry, right? I'll say having a license, because because that's the barrier. Right? How do you feel that working in this industry, as a licensed professional, has helped cultivate your character?
Oh, immensely, right? Because I would say I grew up in Podunk, little town, Rosa, Minnesota. God, I love it, right? But it's very box, right? Like, there's not we didn't have a lot of outside things, right? Where you're like, oh, that gave me a lot of diversity in my life. So we didn't have it, right? So I would say it's given me a ton of diversity on all different lines of how people act, how people show up, how people like purchase stuff, how people think about buying things. So it really gives you like, you start to understand and can gauge on when somebody's serious and when somebody's just pulling your chain, right? And when somebody's really there for the long haul with you, and when somebody's just there because you have the cheapest, you have the cheapest premium in the house right now, right? Because there are those people too. And I always tell a lot of my agents the same thing. If you won that because of price, one day you're going to lose that because of price. So do not let yourself be price bound, right? Like, make it because of you, right? Because, hey, you're the one that's there to help solve the problems with their help, right? Because they're the ones divulging information. And then I just put it into the computer and give them what I have experienced and say, hey, look, based on my experience of you and the stories you're telling me, these are the changes that I would suggest, or these are the options that I would look at. And then let's start to, which one would you like to dig into further? And then once we dig in further, then it's more understanding and more learning. So the learning and understanding for me never stops. So it means it never stops for my customers either, because I don't want them to feel like I got the best, like, forever. I want them to understand they got the best right now, but we got to constantly try to evolve, because the company that might be competitive today might be out of business in 10 years. You never know. You never do know. There's tens of thousands of life insurance companies, as you know, in America, right? Tens of thousands, right? How do you know which insurance is the best? You don't. You basically just try to do the best with what you have at your fingertips, and then you just leave nothing else to chance. I always start with main carriers, so preferred carriers, and then you look for what their loss ratios look like. And then you look at what their, Better Business Bureau standings look like. And you can look at their financials. If they're, if they're a publicly traded company, you can look at their financials. So if those things matter, then you can pay attention to that. Because I'm always a big proponent that paying attention pays. It really does. At the end of the day, paying attention pays. So if you don't want to pay attention, then you shouldn't get angry or frustrated when it doesn't work out the way you thought it was, right? So
that's it. Got to be a student of the process.
You have to be, and it's not, and that's why we say we're the passionate ones, right? Like, I'm not going to try to educate everybody on things they don't need to or want to be educated on. Now, if they want to go into the weeds with me, God bless you, we'll go into there for 5 hours, right? But I just like to talk to people about 30,000 foot perspective, right? Like, let me see from the top down and see if I can see anything that looks out of place, because I'm a pattern guy, right? So I like to look at people's, their whole portfolio of insurance, see if I can find a pattern with what was your purchasing history and why do you keep doing this? Because it looks like because of that, you're hurting your insurance score. And then we can help to improve that insurance score by not making claims that are hurting that, right? Because a lot of people are like, well, I just want to make a claim because I have the policy. Correct. But sometimes it's worth paying out of pocket for, say, that small little glass damage you have versus making the claim and then eating it down the road in the premiums, right? So, or even when we talk to people, I know you brought it up in the beginning, health-wise, right? So we talk to people about, are there things that you can do in your life, right, that will help predict how your life insurance and your health insurance, how those premiums may look at the age of 40, 50, 60, 70, right? There's a lot of companies out there that are trying to help you predict those models, right? And we work with a lot of companies from a group perspective that can monitor those things. And then we even have ways to mitigate when we see losses that may come. We can put in special products that will then mitigate that particular loss, where you say, okay, now I got that covered, and no matter what happens, I can afford that premium, but I can't afford that deductible for that thing. So you can help out with certain things, so there's ways to mitigate. And that's where I'm like, if you can help people mitigate their cash out, right? So the premiums that they're paying, I always for that, right? But I also blend it with benefits, right? Because you can take everything out of the policy to make it the cheapest, but then when they go to make a claim, then there's nothing there to claim on, right, brother? Right. So I always try to talk to people from adequacy, right? In insurance, there's a word that they like to use, and it's called adequate coverage, right? And then I like to call more than or less than of that, right? So more than just means that you're not over covered. It just means that you got superior coverage. And undercovered, less than adequate coverage doesn't mean that you're not covered. It just doesn't, it means that you might have to stroke a check, or you might have some something that is your commitment versus the insurance company's commitment if you do a less than, right? Where I say adequate, you should just have to pay your deductible or pay whatever you think you have to for that policy, and then the rest should be covered. That's the way that we try to talk to people.
It's risk management, right?
100%. That's 100% what it is. And a lot of people just think that risk management means that they try to protect the most they can for the least amount they can. And I'm like, no, that's not right. No, we have to understand what your business does, right? Because that's the thing. What does your business do? How much does it make? How much do you spend in this? How much do you do in that? Do you do it across state lines? How many people do you have? What wage do they have? What kind of industry are you in? Those are all just the top layer, right? Once you start digging in, man, it's like roots. And then we can really find out, like, you're going to have an issue here if you don't protect this, because based on my experience, you can give people the big picture. And that's what I try to do. Hey, look, this is just the big picture of where I see things going. You can choose to protect this, and I think it'll help with this, or you can choose to not protect it, but you might have a liability of this then, just so that everybody understands. That's all I want is, if you understand, then I'm happy, because then you made the decision on your understanding, not mine, right? That's what we want everybody to do.
You connected the dots.
Correct. Tell me what the picture looks like, right? Because that's your interpretation. I can connect the dots, but it's your interpretation. Does that look good to you, or do we need to do different dots, right?
There you go. I got two questions, man. Once again, I appreciate you taking the time, but I have two more questions for you.
All right, brother.
The first is, man, you've always had a ton of energy. I know that with, your team, and for those, when you hear PMA, that's the organization that we used to work together.
Yep.
In different divisions, but both of us were working with that organization. And, I used to see pictures of David, jumping off of stuff that people used to share, doing all kinds of stunts, and always just a lot of energy, just tons of high energy. His team loved him. At this point in your career, 19 years, you've had success, you're running your own firm, you're still continuing to build. How do you stay motivated?
I asked myself
before you answer, that's question one. Question two is, for someone else who's getting ready to join this industry, who's thinking about getting into it, what tidbits would you have for them? So one is, how do you stay motivated? And then two is, for someone who's getting ready to join, what words of wisdom would you have for them?
Those are two awesome questions, and two that, yeah. Okay, so here's what I would say. First thing is, what makes me motivated is that I truly love this business. I didn't ever, again, 9 years old, 18 years old, 27 years old, none of those, because I started insurance truly at 30. I think I was 29 years old when I first started, when I got back with PMA, and then the last, 12, 13 years have been me just hammering it this way, right? I think I had a why, which was, I don't want to be managed. I want to manage, right? And I've looked at industries where I can do it the quickest, right? And insurance was one of those. And again, it's not that I went out there searching for insurance. It's just, that's my experience of it, is that people that care about people, again, the same things that get you success in insurance are going to be the same things that get you success when you manage others, which is part of the business too, because it goes to your second point. How do you stay in this business? Find mentors, find leaders, find peers, okay, that are not just 1 month in the business, that are not just a year in the business. Find people that you can hook onto that are 10 years in the business, because you know what? There's guys out there like me that I love teaching. I love helping guys, and I don't take anything for it. I don't need, I would just, because I want more better insurance people out there, because then I don't have to come and fix everybody's mistakes, right? I don't want that. So I would say the biggest thing to staying in this business is to continue to learn, because there is so much to learn in this business. If you think you know it all, you're going to be out in the next probably year, right? Once you have that mentality that I've learned it all and I know it all and I can just sit back and make this easy money, you're going to be out of the business very shortly, right? But it's those people that are hungry to teach, hungry to educate, hungry to help, like myself. That's why I'm so passionate, because there's so many, like every day I drive, I know there's 10,000 people that I drive past that I could help some way, somehow. And that's why we just try to make ourselves visible, so that if somebody sees what we're talking about, maybe they'll look at us and say, hey, look, that's somebody I want to hook up with and connect with, because they seem like they know something about this industry, right? And then I would say the last thing about staying in this industry, be compliant. 100%. It may hurt. I hate to use the word hurt, but it will limit you on how fast you go, right? But the compliance part is what will keep you there forever. So if you establish a good foundation of compliance, just means learn that what you can and cannot do in insurance, learn what you can and cannot do in front of people and in front of businesses, and just keep your nose clean. And I keep telling my guys and my wife, put your head down and then look up 10 years and look at everything that you've accomplished. But if you try to look up 10 weeks later, 10 months later, like you'll see some cool things, bro. Like look at the back of your wall there. Some of those things probably came in less than a year, but a lot of those plaques and a lot of those accolades, dude, came after 10 years in the business, right?
At least 5 or 6.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Anything that I got within the first year, I didn't get anything in the first year.
No, I mean you might get like a rookie of the year.
I got like a certificate.
There's a couple things where people are like, oh yeah, look at that guy. But I'm saying that doesn't make you even good. You got to put your head down, do those same things for 10 years, right? Yeah, even in basketball, football, they don't crown anybody after week 1. Look at my Packers, bro. Like they look like they should be the first draft pick this year, right? Like, but it's just learn by doing and learn by asking, and always ask, never assume. Always ask, never assume. In insurance, always ask. Always.
Hey man, look, if someone wants to ask you some questions
anytime, brother,
more about this business, how do they get in contact with you? How do they get in contact with Right Quote, and find out more about what's happening out in Colorado as well?
I appreciate you, man. Yeah. So our website is www.rqthat'swho.com. So it reads like RQ That's Who. So it's rightquotethat'swho.com. So our tagline is, who's right quote? It's us. That's who. So basically it's just kind of a rhetorical question, right? So, but it's www.rqthat'swho.com. My direct phone number is 719-820-8833. And then my email is david@rqthat'swho.com. But yeah, anytime anybody's got any questions about business insurance or just insurance in general, or how to get, like a lot of these states too, like there's tricks to them. So if, people got questions about states, I think we're licensed in like 27 states now. So, if you've got questions about anything, I'm more than happy to help. So.
And look, if you just have questions about, communicating and
100%
talking to people, matter of fact, if you want to get recruited into the business and you're looking for, someone who can help you with that process, David not only can help you with that, but he'd also be, someone who's going to be great to help mentor you, through that process and make sure that you're, on the right road and focused on the right activities as 100%. Well. Business that pays is a business that stays. And this man is paid, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you once again.
I appreciate you, J-Rod. You are awesome, dude. And keep doing your thing, because you are a light. You're an inspiration. And I'm telling you, man, like, you have my attention, and I appreciate the heck out of you. And I hope that everybody listening to this understands how passionate this guy is about insurance. And, you can help too, so if people want to talk to somebody that's experienced in the business, J-Rod's got it all too. So I appreciate you, dude. And keep hammering it. And anytime we can chat again, I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you once again. This is Rob Powell signing off. David Baxter, Right Quote in the building. And this is You Should Get a License. Maybe you heard something that made you, think maybe you should get a license. All right. Until next time. I'll take care.
Appreciate you, buddy.